Let's start with the concept of personalized teaching. And I usually want all of my fellows and my friends, since I'm from biology, so I can tell you to understand, because as professors, we are wonderful, we are like filled with a lot of knowledge of the contents and of the material. But this is a very basic, and I can tell you a very important understanding that we should know that how humans receive information and how we learn things. So the biology and psychology of learning is equally important for all of our professors. That was not a topic before, I can tell you, during in-person classes, because there's a class, a professor is there, a student is there, and then we can start teaching. But when we stuck with the pandemic, we came to know that there is a thing which is called as mental health. There is a thing which is called as, the well-being of the students, and they are stressed out and troubled. So we started understanding that psychological factors are the real factors of which involves and which can influence our teaching effectiveness. So first thing we should know that how we learn things, how our brain biologically learn and store information. Our brain is a wonderful machine which is able to process information in one of the best possible ways we know in the universe. It is very well compartmentalized. Different parts of the brain execute different jobs. And I can tell you, if you execute a function by involving different parts of the brain, more parts of the brain, that job will be executed in a better way. That's what biology explains about the function of our brain. But the important question sometimes we usually ask to ourselves, when we learn something, what happens in our mind? When we learn something new, what actually physically happen in our brain? Whenever we receive new information from outside, from our senses, whenever we see new images, whenever we heard new sentence or new word, or whenever we experience new thing, that information is actually processed or transferred into the brain. Think about these things are neurons. Forget about if you are not from biology, you are not supposed to understand the structure of the neurons, but these things exist in the brain. So whatever the information we are receiving, that information is shared with the other neurons present in the brain. And that information is shared with the help of the connection, which is called as synapse. So whenever we learn something new, a new connection is made. And remember, this new connection means that new information. If you repeat that activity, the impulses from the same connection passed again and again, and that will make this synapse stronger. That will going to make this connection stronger. That means that information will stays there and will ultimately become our memory. Once we are receiving information from multiple sources, so when we start receiving information from multiple sources, the options of connecting different neurons will be huge. So what that means, that a person who is not only looking at the teacher, but also listening from the teacher and also involved in the study using different senses to receive an information will be using different parts of the brain and will be creating different connections in his mind. And that is how one person learn from any information out there. Now the thing which I want to tell you is that most of the it must be the thing which is special, which we should understand, is that no two-person in the world, no two-person in the world can create these combination in the same way. In an easier term, that means that if you and me are sitting together in a class and we are learning from a same professor, we will going to process that information in our own ways, in our own minds, and we will going to keep that information in our own way. We will never going to establish the connection in the same way. In the more easier term, that means each one of us is different in terms of learning. So that's the point which we all should understand, that if a teacher is supposed to deliver a lecture, why it happens that all the students will never be able to receive that information in the same way. Because it is biologically impossible to process the same information in the same way by different minds. If we understand that thing, then we might be able to think that there is a need of telling the things in a different way to different students. And that's what we call as personalized studies. It might seem laborious to you guys. Oh my God, if I have 35 students, I need to teach in 35 ways. Maybe yes, but let's move further. But that is the biological core reason that we are different. So we might need different ways of information. That but where the flexible learning came into play. That we have to disseminate information in different ways to these different people. The first thing we should identify in our classroom that how many different types of students are out there. Based on that, I will show you that how we can figure these things out. Okay, so let's say what is the big difference between in-person class teaching and online teaching. You can see a lot of things out there. I mean, people can speak a lot that there is a hell of the difference between the two methods, but at a quantum scale, the real difference between these two modes of teaching and learning is the data. I am not an advocate of online teaching, but since we have to like deal our students in an online way, so after all of my studies and understanding, I came to know I reached that conclusion that the online teaching is superior to the in-person teaching only because in an online teaching you can generate a lot of data about your students. That thing was missing before in in-person class. It was seriously missing in in-person class, but that information is there in an online teaching class, and we can use that data to do two wonderful things. And these two wonderful things are the key things to make your teaching effective. The first, that we can understand where we are lacking, whether we are achieving our learning objectives or not. I want to teach my students a certain thing. How many of my students are actually able to get that thing right? And that is very important. That's like a personal type of evaluation. That is very important for every teacher, that we should know whether I am teaching in a right way or whether I am satisfying most of my students or not. And if you ask the students, if you go to their exams and the results, these are not the true reflector of whether you are achieving something or not. So it is you who should be able to understand whether I am actually getting the true learning outcomes from my class or not. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you will be able to get the individual performances during an online teaching using the online teaching modalities. But what that mean? That now I might be able to figure out, I might be able to classify my students into different groups and into different categories based on the problems they are having out of my teaching or out of my teaching to them. What are the problems they are having in the content, retention, and other things? And let me show you something, and let me take you out of the Microsoft PowerPoint for some time, because the graphs are here, but that will not going to be very handy to show you the graph. I'll be taking you to one of my Google Classrooms, and I'm sure you guys should be able to see my screen. Okay, are you with me? Guys, I'm really sorry. I will shake you guys if I am perfectly fine and healthy. I'm really sorry for that. Just stay there with me, okay? This is one of the Google Classrooms I am using for one of my introductory biology course. I just want to tell you that indirectly we are getting how many different types of information from our students, and we can use these information to make ourselves a better teacher. So I took an informal quiz, this very funny sort of informal quiz somewhere at the start of this semester, which we are concluding at this time. So you can see that it was executed by different students. I'm going to take you that quiz. That quiz is informal, ungraded. It has a weird, funny questions, three questions it was carrying. But it actually tells me something which I might never be able to get from my students. And you will see how. These are the questions. Forget about the question. Let's see. Let me take you to the results. Since I am an administrator, so I can take you to this version, the final version, and you can see there are about 61 responses of my questions. My first question to the student was about the that I asked to my students that please tell me. Let me show you the summary of the thing. Here we go. I ask my students that how many of you tell me the uncertainty about their future, because in the last 1.5 year or so they are like they are sometimes coming to the university, sometimes we ask them to stay at their home, sometimes the lockdown is there, sometimes it's not. They are like, I mean, they are also in a very difficult situation. I ask them to tell me the uncertainty about their future, and look at the data I get out of my students. Like you can see all a different, and I mean it's a reading from 1 to 10. 1 means they are not certain at all, 10 means they are very much certain. And you can see all types of students are out there in the university based on the uncertainty about their future. So I get that data with the help of a modality I am using during my online teaching. That actually helps me to understand to whom I am talking. Now my students, what my students are doing. Now look at the second graph. I asked them that please tell me the level of frustration nowadays they are having. And unanimously they are having like a huge level of frustration they are carrying. And this is like an obvious thing. So when you ask them a certain question in an online teaching system, you are actually storing and saving a certain data. And you can use these data not only to get an insight from you about your class and also to see about your learning objective as well. Let me take you another quiz that is more or less like a quiz related to the course. So this is like introductory, a very basic biology. Those students who never studied biology, they were allowed to sit in this course. And the score, there are like 35 respondents of this quiz. And we will see the summary of their results. So the graph which you are looking at about their scores is the typical of the graph of most of the classes we are teaching. We have like few students who are getting very low score, few students who are very usually getting very high score, and most of the students are getting like score nearly average. And that makes sense to us. Now look at the questions where they are lacking, where most of them are lacking. So this information is the information which I want you guys to ponder more, to mine and to get back the real evaluation from your teaching. So for example, if I click on these questions, look at those questions, and those questions are telling me that my students are correct in this question, most of them. So I don't need to worry about that theme. I have explained that thing well in my class. Look at that, lot of students answering correctly. And here we go. Here I need to think more that most of my students are wrong in answering this question. So somehow either I never talked about this thing, or I have failed to help them to retain that information. So there are different types of answers. Sorry, you can see that when you see like a lot of wrong answers and then some of the correct answers, you should be able to worry about such questions, that why most of the students are not able to answer that question. So that is how we can actually came to know that which part of the content is perfect for us to teach, that we are very much comfortable with that part, but we are not very good in certain other parts of our teaching. So that is how we can evaluate ourselves, and we can go back and we can fix the things perfectly, and we can select the group of students who are not performing very well in those areas. So this is the way we can target the students, or we can find out the students who needs our attention in a particular thing. And that is only appear, and that is only this can only be done with the help of our online teaching methods. So what I will be doing after that, I would love to group those students who are answering wrong in a particular question, and I will give them another task, or I will going to talk with them like for 4 to 5 minutes about these questions. So this is what is the original raw version of what we call as the personalized studies, and that is going to make our teaching more effective as compared to the other professors who are not worrying about these things. Okay.